If you already own a Nikon Z camera, but your lens collection still feels incomplete, another expensive prime may not be the answer. With $2,000, I would build around 3 specific jobs: a lightweight lens that handles most of the day, a fast prime for the moment the light disappears, and an f/2.8 telephoto for portraits and events. This is the Nikon Z kit I would build from scratch in 2026. You are watching Alt Buzz Lenses. Subscribe for honest buying guides that help you build a better lens kit without spending money where you do not need to. At number 3, we have the NIKKOR Z 24 to 105mm, f4 to f7.1. Most photographers building a serious Nikon Z kit would reach straight for the 24 to 120 f4 ESS. It is the more obvious choice, the more prestigious badge on the barrel. This challenge does not start there. It starts with the lens that costs roughly half as much, because the everyday range does not need to swallow half the budget to do its job. Nikon introduced this lens in January of this year as a lightweight full-frame everyday zoom, weighing only 350 grams and reaching half-times magnification between 70 and 105 millimeters. At the wide end, it carries landscapes, architecture, interiors, the kind of travel photography that fills a memory card in an afternoon. Through the middle, it becomes the lens you forget is even mounted, handling street scenes and family moments without asking for attention. At the long end, it pulls in casual portraits, texture, close detail, the sort of shots that used to require a second lens in the bag. That half-times magnification is worth sitting with for a moment. It is not true macro, and it should not be sold as one, but it is enough reach for food, flowers, product detail, the small still life shots that would otherwise demand a dedicated lens this budget simply cannot afford. At 350 grams, it also sets the physical tone for the whole kit, because the third lens in this build is going to be considerably heavier, and starting light gives the system somewhere to grow. The compromise sits in the aperture. f4 at the wide end, sliding down to f7.1 by 105 millimeters. That is not a lens built for dim interiors, evening receptions, or the kind of low light where a photographer needs the background to fall away behind a sharp subject. This is not hidden from you, because it is the exact gap the next lens was chosen to close. A photographer could spend around $1,000 closing that gap right here, with the 24 to 120. Instead, that money stays in the budget for later, for the lens where paying more actually changes what the kit can do. If your photography leans toward travel, family, landscape, or daylight street work, this lens alone will carry most of your shooting days. The extra money the 24 to 120 would have cost is not wasted here. It is simply waiting 2 chapters away for a job that actually needs it. If you have been quietly building your own Nikon Z kit while watching this, drop your current setup in the comments. I read every one, and half the fun of these videos is seeing how differently everyone solves the same budget. At number 2, we have the NIKKOR Z 40mm f2. This is the purchase that makes the whole strategy work, and it costs barely over $200. 50mm is the obvious standard prime, the one everyone expects. 40 sits in the space between that and 35, close enough to natural perspective to feel familiar, wide enough to work indoors and on crowded streets without backing into a wall. Nikon built it at just 170 grams, with a minimum focus distance under 1/3 of a meter, and it turns the camera into something else entirely. Mount the zoom and the body becomes a travel companion. Mount this prime and it becomes a small, quiet, street and evening camera, built for the exact situations where the first lens starts to struggle. The aperture is the point. f2 gives the photographer faster shutter speeds after dark, cleaner separation between subject and background, a camera that keeps working once the sun goes down without asking for more weight or more money. A premium standard prime, built around this same idea, would run $500 to $800, money this kit cannot spare. The 40 does not need to win an optical comparison against the 50S or the 35S. It only needs to solve one weakness, cheaply, and step aside. It gives the kit real aperture for around 11% of the total budget. And that math is the entire argument. The 35S makes a fair case for itself too. Sharper, more premium, more capable, in a studio sense. But it asks for a larger share of a budget that still has one job left to fund. And this challenge is not about winning every individual matchup. It is about what the complete system can do once all three lenses are mounted, one after another, on the same body. For street photographers, indoor family shooting, and anyone who wants a walk-around prime that disappears into a jacket pocket, this is the lens that quietly does the most per dollar in the entire kit. $1,200 remains. This is where I would stop trying to save money. At number 1, we have the NIKKOR Z 70 to 180 mm f2.8. It consumes more than half of what is left, and that imbalance is not an accident. Range can be bought cheaply. A fast aperture on a normal prime can be bought cheaply. But telephoto reach combined with a constant f2.8 and full autofocus is where lens design stops being affordable, and no amount of raising sensitivity or cropping harder recreates it. Nikon positions this as a compact telephoto built for portraits, weddings, sport, and event coverage, holding f2.8 across its entire range while weighing 795 grams. It is the only lens in this kit that combines telephoto compression, a constant wide aperture, and the flexibility to move from a portrait at 70 mm to a stage detail at 180 without changing glass. The obvious objection is 20 mm of missing reach. Nikon's own current 70 to 200 runs about 40% larger than this lens, while covering that extra stretch, and it currently lists for well over $3,000 on its own, more than the entire budget for this challenge, by well over $1,000. What this lens gives up in reach, it returns in weight, in cost, and in a photographer's willingness to actually carry it for a full wedding day. It also accepts Nikon's teleconverters, stretching to roughly 98 to 252 mm with the 1.4 times, and up to 360 mm with the 2 times. An upgrade path that exists outside this budget entirely, waiting for later. There is no dedicated lens stabilization built into this one, the kind found on Nikon's premium 70 to 200 models. On a Nikon Z body with in-body stabilization already doing that work, the compromise is an easy one to accept, and for events or sport, subject motion was always going to demand the right shutter speed regardless of what the lens does on its own. For portrait photographers, wedding shooters, and anyone covering events that run from daylight into evening, this is the lens that turns the other two purchases from a nice everyday kit into something that can actually get hired. Add the weights together and something strange happens. 350 grams, 170 grams, 795 grams, combined at roughly 1,315 grams. Nikon's original 70 to 200 f2.8 alone weighs close to 1,360 grams. This entire 3-lens system weighs less than that single professional zoom by itself. This channel exists to save you from spending on the wrong lens first. If that is useful to you, the subscribe button costs nothing, and it means more of these budget breakdowns land in your feed before you make your next purchase. 24 to 105 handles the ordinary hours, the travel days, the daylight street work, at the cost of speed. 40 f2 answers for that weakness the moment the light fails, at the cost of being fixed to one focal length. 70 to 180 answers for everything the other two cannot touch. Portraits with real separation, events that run past sunset at the cost of most of the remaining budget. Each one covers for something the others cannot do, and none of them was chosen to win an individual comparison. They were chosen to win as a system. A photographer with $4,000, or $6,000, or a dedicated need for wildlife or ultra-wide landscapes should build differently. This is not the 3 best lenses Nikon makes. It is what I would build with exactly $2,000 and nowhere else for the money to go. So here is the real question. If you had this exact budget, would you keep the 70 to 180 at the center of the kit, or would you pull money back toward the everyday zoom instead? Tell me which one of these 3 you would swap first. $2,000, 3 lenses, 1 deliberate imbalance. The gear does not have to be expensive everywhere. It just has to be expensive where it counts. If you want the next budget breakdown before you spend $1 on your own kit, subscribe to Alt Buzz Lenses, and I will see you in the next one.